Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here, and this is how to use Wishiwashi, a sad little fishy. Well, let's see what this guy can do. So it's a pure water-type Pokemon, which is already a pretty solid start right there. That's going to have a 2x weakness to grass, a 2x weakness to electric, and that's all that the water-type has to worry about, while picking up some really nifty resistances as well. That we have Steel, Fire, and Ice being fairly common, and water is getting quite a bit of usage as well. So all of our resistances are going to be an excellent trade-off for our weaknesses. And then we can see the offensive hits, fire, ground, and rock. Those are actually pretty threatening. Hitting ground type Pokemon and fire type super effective is going to be really nice. Now, the only thing that really bothers us with our resistances of dragon, grass, and water, it's going to be that grass hits us super effective, also resists, so we will have to worry about that. And then we check out Wishiwashi's stats. It has the lowest base stat total out of any Pokemon ever. That's kind of ridiculous, but when it gets to level 20 and schools together, it gets some of the craziest stats ever. Like, this is where Wishiwashi gets super exciting because it has a 620 base stat total. So it goes over a pseudo-legendary base stat total. It goes over a mythical Pokemon base stat total. And while the hit points do remain the same because you can't really do form and hit point changing too much, kind of like with Mega Evolutions, we get absurd offensive and defensive stats. So 45 base hit points, 130 on defense, 135 on that special defense. Then we have 140 attack and 140 special attack. So we do tons of damage and we don't take a lot of damage. And now that's pretty much where we're going to be basing everything off of Wishiwashi. Like, that form is super crazy. So let's go hop on over to Cerebi and just kind of see how the schooling ability works. So it changes the Pokemon's form when it's level 20 and if it has more than 25% hit points. So make sure you don't go below 25% hit points. When that happens, then Wishiwashi is going to deschool, go into a low, incredibly useless base stat Pokemon, and that's going to be a pretty big problem right there. But other than that, the moveset is where things are weird. We don't have enough moves to actually pad out a full physical moveset or a full special moveset, so we're kind of going to have to meet somewhere in between, which does work out because we have 140 in both offensive stats. So no matter which one we pick, it's going to be tons of damage right there, and it does get better when you think about it because we have that 30 super low base speed. Everything's outspeeding us, but we're going to out-tank it and out-damage them, so that's where things are going to start to swing into our favor, which means we can run something like a Quiet Nature, like a Brave Nature, which we'll talk about when we hop over to Pokemon Showdown. So we can split, become Mix, and then have a lot of tankiness and do a lot of damage. So now we're just going to be looking Aqua Tail. That's going to be pretty good. And then we can also go and find the Ice Beam. So we have Aqua Tail, Ice Beam, Earthquake, maybe Scald, maybe some kind of other move. Not a huge fan of the U-turn, and yeah, that's kind of it. So when we just kind of go through it, yeah, we don't really see too many other things. The coverage is fairly low, but the Pokemon stats and the idea of the Pokemon is pretty absurd. So let's go and see what happens when we go into Pokemon Showdown and Wishiwashi. So this is going to be like ideas of what to do with it, because I already talked about this moveset right here. You run a Quiet Nature or Brave Nature depending on whatever you want to thread your damage. As we go into the damage calculations, we might see that the Brave Nature might be one of the better options, and then just kind of make your residual damage that special attack and find some good usage right there. And then yeah, you can go with Waterfall or Aqua Tail. This is where the decision falls on you. Now normally Waterfall is a really good idea because 20% chance to flinch for free could be pretty awesome, but since we're the slowest Pokemon on the field, unless you're playing Trick Room, which is okay with Wishiwashi, I feel like there's better Pokemon that you can use that Trick Room for. Unless you're going Trick Room, you're not really going to lose that chance to flinch. So it's like, do you want 10 more base power at the cost of 10 accuracy? So that's going to be your decision on the Aqua Tail versus the Waterfall. Personal preference. Some people think that Focus Blast is a really good move. Other people think that Focus Miss is not even worth anyone's time. So that's going to be your preference right there. Earthquake, that's coverage. That works. We can add that. Ice Beam for super effective hits, and then the Scald. So, got 2 physical hits. We only have 1 stab, so that works out. And then we have 2 special hits. Now you can go for Scald. If you get that 30% chance and burn your opponent, and then they don't damage you on physical attacks, that's going to keep your schooling alive longer. It's going to make you even tankier, and then you get to really trash your opponent. Or you can go for the biggest damage possible on that Hydro Pump. So it becomes an accuracy damage issue versus like utility or something, and that's kind of it. Other than that, we have the Figgy Berry. So you can run Citrus Berry or Figgy Berry. I think that is going to be the most recommended thing, because once you lose your hit points and deschool, that's going to be pretty bad. But Figgy Berry is massive, restores 50% of your hit points if you're below 1/4. So if you're in that damage range, like, look how tanky we are. We're going to be in those really weird like 3-hit KO scenarios where we're going to be surviving in red hit points quite often. So if that happens, Figgy Berry activates, we don't de-school, we get an extra move, and then we can maybe KO an extra opponent off of that, because now they have to kill us 1.5 times instead of 1 time off of that Figgy Berry. But it does have to work on that lower end range, and Citrus Berry is going to be less healing, but safer. So there's also some other things that you can do. We have access to the Endeavor and the Tearful Look. The idea behind Endeavor and Tearful Look is that if you know you're going to de-school, you might as well use one of these moves because you're not going to be doing any damage. Your Wishiwashi is going to get hit, and then since you're slower, you're going into the solo form, and now you have a 20 base attack move that's not going to do any damage. So if you have the Tearful Look, that could just at least lower your opponent's attack and special attack before Wishiwashi dies, and then you bring in new Pokemon. Or if you have the Endeavor, that's going to be a way of, well, now you're going to be at super low hit points. Like, we have 45 base hit points. So if we're down to our bottom 20%, bottom 10% of those hit points, use Endeavor, well, now pretty much any Pokemon you bring in is going to be finishing off the low opponent right now. So that's another thing to incorporate into your moveset potentially, that do you want the Scald, do you want the Hydro Pump? If you don't want that, then you can run that extra tech option right there, and maybe even go for the Endeavor or the Tearful Look, depending on what kind of Snowball and what kind of, like, team you're playing. Now, if you have a tanky team and you're going for setup, it might be better to just use that Tearful Look, bring in a Pokemon like Mimikyu, or bring in a Pokemon that wants to set up, because your opponent's doing less damage to you, which means more turns to set up, more turns to go for that extra sweep right there. Or you can just go for Endeavor, pick off the opponent's Pokemon, and that's going to be the best way of trying to convert, you know, 1, 2, maybe even 3 hit KOs off of the Wishiwashi for its effectiveness. And then I had this right here, Dive Protect with Leftovers. So, Leftovers, it gives 1/16. Citrus Berry is going to be giving 4/16, and then Figgy Berry, or whatever Confusion Berry we decide to use, that's going to be 8/16 right there. So it shows that Wishiwashi is going to have to be on the field for a crazy amount of turns, but Dive has 80 base power. Well, Waterfall has 80 base power, so really, we're playing this game to where we're gaining extra sustain. You know, we use that Dive, we come out of it, we go for Protect, we use Dive, we use Protect, and we try to keep our health up as much as possible. Now, we can get into some really weird end-of-turn situations where, alright, we can maybe Protect on the Wishiwashi, pull our hit points up. That way, we're going to go back into our schooled form. Maybe they don't have a lot of damage against us, and then we can try to convert off of that or something. So it shows that there's a lot of weirdness going on when we're playing the sustain game. The only problem with Dive is that if your opponent knows you're going for Dive, you're going for Protect, well, then they can set up, alright, well, I know I'm going to be eating a really low move. However, when we're considering DPS, or I mean like DPT, damage per turn, Dive is going to be 40 damage per turn compared to the 80 damage per turn of Waterfall. So your opponent knows that after 2 turns, they might not be taking like a life-threatening hit, so they have the freedom to set up on you or switch or do something to react. So that's going to be like where the risk reward is. Also, you can run Dive, Protect, and then whatever other moves. This is where you can go Earthquake, Aqua Tail. So you lose that special, you lose that ice coverage, but that means you do have the option that the opponent's trying to go for just complete aggro, or you find that opportunity to dive or protect on them, then this is going to be a very powerful sustain set when we're running the Wishiwashi. So that's kind of it. It's weird. You're very straightforward. You run just the moveset because we don't have access to much, so it's going to be pretty easy to protect you. It's also going to be pretty easy just to play the Pokemon itself. There's little bits of tech. There's also just the absurdity of the Pokemon's stats and the way the schooling ability works and the item interactions. So there's a lot of just craziness behind Wishiwashi that adds depth to this Pokemon where there really isn't any. So that's what makes this Pokemon really fascinating. And then we go into the damage calculation. So I just wanted to pull up some really interesting stuff. Say we have Quiet Nature. Well, Quiet Nature means our Ice Beam is KOing a Pokemon like Garchomp. So what happens if we go to the Brave Nature? Well, we're still KOing a Pokemon like Garchomp. So the idea with Wishiwashi is you want everything to two-hit KO the opponent. That if you can one-shot them with a super effective hit, that is just fantastic. But if not, max out hit points, max out the attack, and you'll eventually find a way. That, look, Garchomp's a very tanky Pokemon. 108 on the hit points, 95 on defense, and Waterfall is almost a 2-hit KO. So the Ice Beam saves us there. And now I want to go and look at some damage numbers as to what we can expect from the Wishiwashi, because we just 2-hit KO everything, and it feels very satisfying. So let's go and look at the ranges of Pokemon we can expect to KO, and at Scald. So even with just the Quiet Nature, no investment, Scald is still finding really good damage on a Pokemon like Oricorio. 75 base hit points, 70 base special defense. Even if we transition over to the Brave Nature, Scald is still finding KOs. With Hydro Pump, you're still getting 2-hit KOs, and that is exactly what we're looking for right there. Now, even as these numbers change, like what if we go 90 base hit points, 90 base defense. Well, Brave Nature means that waterfall still 2-hit KOing. We're still being very tanky. We're still eating up all these hits and doing really well. 90 base hit points into 70 base special defense, still 2-hit KOs on the Scald. So those numbers will have to change quite a lot. You'd have to start going into tankier and tankier Pokemon before Wishiwashi doesn't 2-hit KO them. And remember, we effectively have 125% of our hit points, 150% of our hit points, and we're going to be doing very well because of it. So other numbers right here, I brought up the Tapu Lele. So Pokemon with like base 70 hit points, max hit point investment, I mean, we still 2-hit KO them on something like the Aqua Tail, and then we can start running all kinds of weirdness. So look at this right here. Brave Nature, 0 attack investment, Aqua Tail damage, still going to be enough to 2-hit KO the Pokemon right here. So the accuracy does come into play, but it's showing the difference between the Waterfall, between the Aqua Tail, how much tanky investment we can do, because realistically, you're not going to see many Pokemon that are tankier than like full hit point investment into a 70 hit point, 75 defense or something like that. And we're still getting these reasonable amounts of damage right here. So you can go split defense investment, full special defense investment. This is Psychic Terrain, Tapu Lele, and we can revenge a good amount of damage right here. And under something like a Citrus Berry, we're actually going to be able to survive it. You know, 13% chance to 2-hit KO after the Citrus Berry recovery. Very niche, very weird matchup right here. That does show that there's no choice specs, no life orbs, so those will change up your numbers. But then that kind of shows the difference between the Figgy Berry, between any kind of other berry. So where's the Figgy Berry? Figgy Berry right here, guaranteed to a KO after Figgy Berry recovery, because your Figgy Berry isn't going to activate. Now, what if we're in something like a life orb on the Tapu Lele? So it's very matchup dependent. Because, yeah, it's going to be boosting a lot of our damage, but if they have the Life Orb, even if they have, like, the choice specs on the Tapu Lele, I believe we start finding those survival ranges right there. And that's going to be a lot of damage. So it's going to bring up our hit points quite a bit, and then we can switch out. So now we're above 50%, we can switch out, we can maybe go into a Dark-type Pokemon, we can maybe go into a tanky Pokemon for the Resist, after doing, you know, 50-something% to the Tapu Lele as well, and knowing that's either taking Life Orb damage, it's locked into specs. There's a lot of strangeness going on, and we can still get away with it. Full hit point, full defense, full special defense investment, and then Wishiwashi just kind of walks away from that damage while still putting out 2-hit KOs against a lot of different Pokemon that want to go and pull up something like the Kangaskhan, even no attack investment. So Brave Nature, no attack investment on something like Kangaskhan, 2-hit KOs on the Aqua Tail. It still works. It's just going to go and put out damage. Now, this isn't the Mega Kangaskhan, which would be a bit tankier, and then, like, that's where you can adjust your damage numbers, that you aren't directly locked down to 252 in hit points, 252 in attack. You have a lot of freedom that you can make the Pokemon tanky as you want, and then that's when you find those survival ranges, because, okay, now you're extra tanky, Figgy Berry activates, you're probably like, you know, 170% of your total hit points compared to just a pure hit point, pure attack Wishiwashi, and you're doing effectively the same thing. That when you're looking at these damage numbers, and you're finding this weird range of overkilling, except on like the tankiest of Pokemon, you know, the average Pokemon, let's see, Tapu Koko. So I know Tapu Koko is going to like blow us up with special attacks or something like that, but even then, 70 hit points, 85 defense, this is what a lot of Pokemon are running at, and even the Waterfall is overkilling. So plan for the Waterfall, plan for the Aqua Tail, see how much damage you're doing, and yeah, you can just strip away your attack investment, go into other investment ranges, and now you can survive those very scary attacks. Well, maybe not in this situation on Tapu Koko, but I mean, this is like worst case scenario, Electric Terrain, Life Orb, stab boosted, 95 special attack, kind of crazy move right here. So it shows, it's a testament to the tankiness of Wishiwashi. It's a testament to the damage that it can still put out. Now remember, if you do drop below that range and you're schooling and you de-school, then you're not doing as much damage. Then you're dropping down to, what's a 20 attack, uninvested, Aqua Tail. It's not going to be a lot. So it's weird playing the Wishiwashi. That it plays like no other Pokemon because it has this strange amount of tankiness. It has this low hit point pool, but it also does insane amounts of damage. So there we go, guys. Hopefully just giving you an idea as to what Wishiwashi is capable of and the things to understand. Super effective hits, you're golden. Outside of that, you still clean up really well, and then it's just going to be a lot of personal tech and just interesting layers of what you want to do with this Pokemon, and that's going to be very rewarding right there. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.